June parked his old car in front of his small countryside house. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. After a long day at the aerospace company where he worked as an engineer, all he wanted was to sit on his porch, drink a cold beer, and pet his dog. "Bori, I'm home," he called out. Usually, the white Jindo dog would come running, tail wagging, happy to see his owner. But today, there was no excited barking, no furry friend jumping up to greet him. "Bori," June called again, a small worry growing in his chest. He put his work bag down by the door and walked around to the backyard. That's when he heard it. A low, warning growl. June froze. Bori never growled at him. "Hey buddy, it's just me," June said softly, walking slowly toward the sound. He found Bori standing guard in front of his doghouse. The dog's ears were up, his body tense. When June tried to come closer, Bori growled again, showing his teeth. "What's gotten into you?" June asked, confused. Then he noticed something moving inside the doghouse. At first, June thought maybe Bori had found an injured animal. It wouldn't be the first time his dog brought home a bird or a rabbit that needed help. But what crawled out from behind Bori was definitely not an animal. It was a girl. June's mouth fell open. The girl was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with long silver hair that seemed to glow faintly in the dimming light. Her eyes were an impossible shade of violet. She wore a tight-fitting outfit made of material June had never seen before. It looked like metal, but moved like cloth. "Hello," June said, taking a step back. "Who are you? How did you get in my yard?" The girl tilted her head to one side, watching him with those strange purple eyes. She said something, but the words made no sense. They weren't Korean or English or any language June had ever heard. Bori moved to stand between them, still protecting the strange girl. When June tried to step closer, Bori growled again. "My own dog is choosing a stranger over me," June muttered. "Great." The girl reached down to pet Bori, who immediately relaxed under her touch. The dog's tail wagged so hard his whole body shook. June had never seen Bori act this way with anyone. Looking closer, June noticed more odd things about the girl. Her skin had a slight shine to it, almost like it was reflecting light that wasn't there. Her ears were shaped normally, but the tips came to small points, and when she blinked, he could swear her eyelids closed sideways. "You're not from around here, are you?" June asked slowly, even though he knew she couldn't understand him. The girl smiled and pointed up at the darkening sky, where the first stars were becoming visible. June's heart beat faster. "No way," he whispered. "That's impossible." But he was an engineer. He knew about the vastness of space, the billions of galaxies, the countless planets. Was it really impossible that life existed elsewhere? That somehow, this strange girl had come from beyond the stars. The girl said something else in her musical language, then made a crashing motion with her hands, followed by walking with her fingers. "Your ship crashed, and you walked here," June guessed. She nodded eagerly, then pointed at Bori, and mimicked the dog walking to her and leading her back. "Bori found you," June said, understanding now. "He brought you here." The dog woofed softly, as if confirming the story. He looked at the alien girl with complete adoration, pressing against her leg. She scratched behind his ears, and Bori closed his eyes in bliss. June ran a hand through his hair, trying to think. He had an alien in his backyard. A beautiful, strange alien girl who couldn't speak any Earth language. And somehow, his normally cautious dog was completely, utterly smitten with her. "Well," June said finally, "I guess you better come inside. It's getting dark, and we have a lot to figure out." The girl smiled at him, and for a moment, her skin glowed brighter. She stood up and took a hesitant step toward June. Bori walked between them, looking back and forth as if making sure his two favorite people were getting along. June's simple life had just become very, very complicated. June sat at his kitchen table, watching the strange girl eat rice and vegetables with curious delight. She picked up each piece of food, studied it, then popped it into her mouth. Sometimes she smiled. Other times she made a face and quickly drank water. Bori hadn't left her side once. The dog sat pressed against her chair, looking up at her with complete devotion. "This is crazy," Jun muttered to himself. "I have an alien in my kitchen." After many attempts at talking had failed, Jun tried drawing pictures. He drew a simple spaceship, then a crash. The girl nodded eagerly. An idea struck him. Jun was good with machines. At work, he helped design parts for satellites. Maybe he could build something to help them talk. He went to his workroom and came back with parts. An old phone, some wires, a small speaker, and tools. The girl watched with interest as he worked at the table. "I hope this works," Jun said, mostly to himself. 3 hours later, Jun had built a simple device. It had 2 microphones and a computer chip that he programmed to listen for patterns in speech. It wasn't perfect, but it might help them start to communicate. He turned it on and spoke clearly. "My name is Jun." The machine made some clicks and whirs. Then he handed one microphone to the girl and pointed at her. She spoke into it. Her voice was musical, with sounds Jun had never heard before. The machine processed for a moment. Then from the speaker came a robotic voice. "I am Nari." "Nari," Jun repeated, surprised to hear a Korean-sounding name. The girl nodded and pointed to herself. "Nari," she said without the machine. Jun smiled. "It works. Kind of." He spoke into the microphone again. "Where are you from?" More strange sounds from Nari. Then the machine translated. "Planet called Luma. Far star system." Bori woofed softly, and Nari reached down to pet him. "How did you get here?" Jun asked. "Ship broke. Study Earth air. Emergency land in trees." Jun nodded. That matched what he'd guessed from her hand gestures earlier. "Why does Bori like you so much?" he asked, pointing to his dog who had now put his head in Nari's lap. Nari's answer came through broken and unclear. The machine couldn't translate it well, but Jun caught words like connect, mind, and special. "You can connect with his mind?" Jun asked, trying to understand. Nari nodded. She put her hand on Bori's head and closed her eyes. Suddenly, Bori stood up and walked to Jun's refrigerator. He pawed at it once, then returned to Nari's side. "Did you tell him to do that?" Jun asked, amazed. "Yes, simple thoughts," the machine translated. "That's incredible," Jun said. "On your planet, do all people connect with dogs?" Nari answered, and this time the translation was clearer. "Not dogs. Similar animals. Sacred bond." She patted Bori, who looked at her with pure happiness. "My people and these animals grow together for thousands of years. Share thoughts. Friends. And Bori can do this too." "But he's just an Earth dog," Jun said, confused. Nari's answer was slow, as if she was choosing her words carefully. "Bori special. Strong mind. Rare to find Earth dog who can hear thoughts." She leaned down and touched her forehead to Bori's head. The dog's tail wagged so fast it was a blur. "He found me in woods. Knew I needed help. Brought me to safe place. To you." Jun shook his head in wonder. His ordinary life had changed overnight. His dog wasn't so ordinary after all. And now he was hosting a visitor from another world. "You need help fixing your ship?" he asked. Nari nodded. "Need materials. Need time." "Ok," Jun said, making a decision. "You can stay here until your ship is fixed. But we need to be careful. Other people might not understand." Nari reached across the table and touched Jun's hand. Her skin was smooth and warm. "Thank you," she said, without using the machine. Bori barked happily, looking between his 2 favorite people in the universe. "We need to make you look more normal," Jun said the next morning. Nari stood in his living room, her silver hair shining in the sunlight. Her violet eyes blinked at him, waiting. June had found some old clothes that belonged to his sister. The jeans and t-shirt looked strange on Nari, but they covered her alien outfit. "Your hair and eyes will make people ask questions," Jun said. He went to the bathroom and came back with a box of hair dye his sister had left behind. "This will make your hair black, like most Korean people." Nari seemed to understand. She nodded and followed June to the bathroom. Bori trotted behind them, never more than a few steps from Nari. An hour later, Nari looked at herself in the mirror. Her beautiful silver hair was now black. June also gave her a pair of sunglasses to hide her violet eyes. "Now we need a story," Jun said. He spoke into the translation device. "If anyone asks, you're my cousin from Seoul, visiting for a few weeks." "Cousin," Nari repeated, trying the new word. "Seoul." "Yes, good," Jun said. "But try not to talk much. Your accent is unusual." Just then, there was a knock at the door. Bori barked once, then growled low in his throat. June looked through the window and sighed. It was his neighbor, Mr. Hyun, an old man who used to teach science at the local school. Mr. Hyun was known for being nosy. "Remember, you're my cousin," June whispered to Nari. "And Bori, be normal." He opened the door. "Good morning, Mr. Hyun." The old man smiled, but his eyes were sharp and curious. "Good morning, June. I saw you had a visitor and thought I'd say hello." "This is my cousin, Nari," June said, trying to sound casual. "She's visiting from Seoul." Mr. Hyun bowed slightly to Nari. "Nice to meet you." Nari bowed back, a little too low and a little too long. "Nice meet you," she said carefully. Mr. Hyun's eyes narrowed. Then he noticed Bori, who was pressed against Nari's leg, looking up at her with total adoration. "Your dog seems very fond of your cousin," Mr. Hyun said. June laughed nervously. "Yes, it's strange. Usually Bori doesn't like strangers." "Very strange indeed," Mr. Hyun said. He looked at Nari again. "Have we met before? You seem familiar." Nari shook her head. "No. First time." "Here." Mr. Hyun frowned. "Your accent is unusual. Where did you study?" Before June could answer, Bori suddenly barked loudly and ran to the door, pushing past Mr. Hyun. "Bori, come back," June called, grateful for the distraction. "I should catch him," June said to Mr. Hyun. "Thanks for stopping by." He hurried out after Bori, pulling Nari with him. Bori was waiting for them at the edge of the yard. "Good boy," Nari said to Bori when they were out of earshot. She knelt down and touched her forehead to his. "Did you tell him to do that?" June asked, amazed. Nari nodded. "Danger. Old man suspicious. Mr. Hyun is smart. He taught science for 40 years, June said. We need to be careful around him." They walked into the woods behind June's house. After about 20 minutes, they came to a small clearing. There, partially hidden by trees and brush, was Nari's ship. It wasn't very big, about the size of June's car. It was shaped like a teardrop and made of a smooth, dark material that seemed to absorb light. "This is how you got here?" June asked. Nari nodded. "Small ship. For one person only. For science study." She touched the side of the ship, and a panel slid open. Inside, June could see strange devices and blinking lights. "Broken," Nari said, pointing to a damaged section. "Need special parts to fix." "What kind of parts?" June asked. Nari used the translator to explain what she needed. Some things June recognized, like certain metals and power sources. Others were completely unknown to him. "I can help with some of these," he said. "I'm an engineer. But others, I don't know." Nari put her hand on his arm. "Together, we try." Bori woofed in agreement, looking up at them both with trust in his eyes. As they walked back to the house, June noticed Mr. Hyun watching them from his window. The old man's face was thoughtful, suspicious. "We have to be more careful," June whispered to Nari. Mr. Hen is watching us. Nari nodded. She reached down to pet Bori, who leaned into her touch with complete happiness. Protect secret, she said simply. Protect Bori. June understood then that Neri cared as much about his dog as Bori cared about her. It was a bond he didn't fully understand, but it was real and strong. And somehow, he was now part of it too. June looked at the list they had made. Nari needed special materials to fix her ship. Some things were easy to find, like copper wire and glass. Others would be harder. We need a strong power source, June said, pointing to the last item on the list. And something called, what did you call it? Quantum stabilizer, Neri said through the translator. For navigation. June scratched his head. I don't think we have those on Earth. But maybe we can build something similar. Just then, June's phone rang. It was Suma, a woman who worked with him at the aerospace company. June liked Suma, and he thought she might like him too. Hello, June. Are you coming to the technology fair today? You promised to help at our company booth, Suma said. June had completely forgotten. The fair. Yes, I'll be there. Can I bring my cousin? She's visiting from Seoul. Of course, Suma said. I'd love to meet her. When June hung up, he turned to Nari with excitement. This is perfect. The technology fair will have all kinds of parts and tools. Maybe we can find what you need there. An hour later, they arrived at the big exhibition hall. It was filled with booths showing the newest technology. Robots, computers, drones, and other machines were everywhere. Suma was waiting at the aerospace company's booth. She smiled when she saw June, but her smile faded a little when she noticed Nari. Suma, this is my cousin Nari, June said. Suma bowed politely. Nice to meet you. Then she looked down. You brought your dog to the fair. June had almost forgotten about Bori, who was walking closely beside Nari. The dog refused to stay home without her. Yes. Bori really loves my cousin. Won't leave her side, June explained. Shuni raised her eyebrows. I've never seen Bori act like this with anyone. He's usually so independent. Yes, it's strange, June said quickly. So, what are we showing today? Sumi pointed to a model of a satellite part. This new guidance system, but we're having trouble with the power consumption. It uses too much energy and overheats. Nari, who had been quiet, suddenly pointed at the model. She said something in her language, then remembered to use the translator. Design wrong. Power flows wrong way. Sumi looked surprised. What does she mean? June wasn't sure, but he watched as Neri picked up a pencil and drew a new design on a piece of paper. The drawing was simple but showed a different arrangement of parts. Try this way, Neri said. June studied the drawing. This could work. See how she's rerouted the power flow. It would reduce heat and save energy. Suma looked at the drawing, then at Nari with new interest. Where did you study engineering? Nari smiled nervously. Family talent. While Sumi was distracted by another visitor, June and Nari walked around the fair. They found several items on their list, special metals, tools, and even a small but powerful battery. As they were leaving one booth, a man bumped into Nari, knocking off her sunglasses. For a moment, her violet eyes were visible to everyone nearby. June quickly picked up the glasses and put them back on Nari's face, but not before Sumi saw. She had been following them, curious about June's strange cousin. Her eyes, Sumi whispered. They're purple. Colored contacts, June said quickly. She likes fashion. Sumi didn't look convinced. And her accent. And why is your dog so obsessed with her? Before June could answer, Bori started barking. A security guard was coming their way. No dogs allowed in the exhibition hall, the guard said sternly. We were just leaving, June said, pulling Nari toward the exit. Back in the car, June sighed with relief. That was close. Sumi is suspicious now. Nari looked sad. Sorry, I caused problems. No, it's not your fault, Jun said. And look, we found almost everything we need. Nari brightened. Yes, ship almost can be fixed. Bori, sitting in the back seat, put his head on Nari's shoulder and licked her ear. She laughed, a sound like music, and rubbed his head. Jun watched them in the mirror and felt a strange mix of emotions. He was helping Nari fix her ship so she could leave. But what would happen to Bori when she was gone? What would happen to all of them? 3 black cars with dark windows drove slowly down the small country road. Inside the first car sat Director Moon, a stern man with gray hair and cold eyes. He had spent 20 years looking for proof of alien life. The signal came from this area, he said to his team. Something entered our atmosphere 5 days ago. It wasn't a meteor. The cars stopped in the village center. Men and women in black suits got out and began asking questions. They showed pictures of a strange light in the sky and asked if anyone had seen anything unusual. Back at Jun's house, Nari was helping fix the ship. Her hands moved quickly over the broken parts, connecting wires and fitting pieces together. Jun watched in amazement. You really know what you're doing, he said. Nari smiled. On my planet, all children learn science and space travel. Like your children learn, riding bicycles. Bori lay nearby, watching Nari with loving eyes. Every few minutes, he would get up and bring her a tool, as if he knew exactly what she needed next. The bond between you two is incredible, Jun said. Nari nodded. On my planet, this bond is sacred. We believe. She paused, looking for the right words, then spoke through the translator. We believe souls find each other across stars, across time. My people and these animals. We are connected not just by minds, but by something deeper. Jun was about to ask more when his phone rang. It was his neighbor, Mr. Hyun. Jun, there are government people in the village, Mr. Hyun said, his voice low and worried. They're asking about lights in the sky, strange things. They look very serious. Jun's heart beat faster. Thanks for telling me. Have they talked to you yet? They're coming to my house next, Mr. Hyun said. What should I say? I know your cousin isn't really your cousin. Jun froze. Mr. Hyun knew more than he had thought. Mr. Hyun, please. It's complicated, but Nari isn't dangerous. She just needs help. There was a long pause. I was a science teacher for 40 years, Jun. I've always believed we aren't alone in the universe. It's she, not from Earth. If these people find her, they'll take her away, Jun said, not directly answering. They'll study her like a lab animal. Another pause. I understand. I won't say anything. Just as Mr. Hyun hung up, there was a knock at his door. Director Moon and 2 agents stood there. Mr. Hyun, I'm Director Moon from the Special Science Division. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Mr. Hyun invited them in, his mind racing. He had to protect Jun and the alien girl, but how? As Director Moon began showing him pictures and asking questions, Bori suddenly appeared at Mr. Hyun's window. The dog barked loudly, then ran away. What was that? Director Moon asked, standing up quickly. Just a neighborhood dog, Mr. Hyun said. Please continue. But Director Moon was looking out the window. Is that your neighbor's dog? The white one? Yes, that's Bori. He belongs to Jun Kim. Does he always run around alone? Director Moon asked. Mr. Hyun shrugged. Sometimes, Jun lets him out to play. Director Moon turned to one of his agents. Check the readings again. Focus on this area. Back at Jun's house, Nari was petting Bori, who had just returned. Good boy, she said softly. You warned them. What do you mean? Jun asked. I asked Bori to look, to see if danger. He found men in black clothes, asking questions. Jun paced nervously. This is bad. If they find you or your ship. Nari put her hand on Jun's arm. On my planet, we have saying. Fear clouds the path forward. What does that mean? Jun asked. It means we must think clearly, not with fear, Nari explained. We have friends. We have Bori. We have each other. June looked at her and felt calmer. Somehow, her words made sense. They would find a way through this. Outside, the black cars were slowly making their way toward June's house. June peeked through the curtains. The black cars were moving slowly down his street. "We need to hide your ship better," he said to Nari. "And we need to leave now." They hurried out the back door. Bori led the way through the woods, taking a path different from their usual one. It was as if the dog knew they needed to stay hidden. "Bori knows safe way," Nari said quietly. After walking for 20 minutes, they reached the ship. June and Nari quickly covered it with more branches and leaves. "Wait," June said suddenly. "I hear something." They froze. Footsteps were coming closer. Then a voice called out, "June, are you out here?" "It's me, Suma." June and Nari looked at each other in surprise. Why was Sumi here? "Stay hidden," June whispered to Nari. Then he stepped out where Sumi could see him. "Suma, what are you doing in the woods?" Sumi's face showed she was angry. "I followed you. I knew something strange was happening. Your cousin with the purple eyes, your dog acting weird, and now you're hiding in the forest." Before June could answer, Sumi pushed past him and saw the partially hidden ship. Her eyes went wide. "What is that?" she gasped. "I can explain," June started, but Sumi wasn't listening. She was looking at Nari, who had stepped out from behind a tree. Bori stood protectively at Nari's side. "You're not human," Sumi said. It wasn't a question. Nari took off her sunglasses, showing her violet eyes. "No, not human." Sumi took a step back. "I'm going to tell those government agents. They're looking for something like you." "Sumi, wait," June said. "Nari isn't dangerous. She just wants to go home." "She could be tricking you," Sumi argued. "She could be planning an invasion." Nari looked sad. "No invasion. Just science study. My world peaceful. We explore, learn." "Why should I believe you?" Sumi asked. Just then, Bori did something amazing. He walked to Suma and sat in front of her. Then he looked at Nari, who nodded. Bori's eyes seemed to lock with Sumi's. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Sumi gasped and put her hand to her head. "What was that?" she whispered. "I saw. I felt." "Bori showed you," Nari explained. "Showed you truth, my home, my purpose." "How is that possible?" Sumi asked, looking at the dog with new eyes. "Special bond," Nari said. "My people and canine animals share mind link. Bori rare earth dog who can do this." Sumi sank down onto a fallen log. "That was amazing. I saw a beautiful planet with 2 moons. I felt peace, curiosity." "Now you understand," Jun said. "Nari isn't a threat. She just needs our help to fix her ship and go home." Sumi was quiet for a moment. Then she stood up. "What can I do to help?" June smiled with relief. "We need to finish repairs before those agents find us. They're questioning everyone in the village," Sumi said. "They have strange equipment that detects unusual energy." "My ship gives small energy," Nari said, looking worried. "They will find soon." "Then we work faster," June decided. He turned to Sumi. "Can you keep watch? Let us know if anyone comes." Sumi nodded. "I'll help, but I have a lot of questions." "Later," June promised. As Sumi walked to the edge of the clearing, June and Nari returned to the ship. They worked together, connecting wires and testing systems. "Almost done," Nari said after an hour. "Navigation fixed. Power system working." June felt a mix of happiness and sadness. The ship was almost ready. Soon, Nari would leave Earth. "What about Bori?" he asked quietly. Nari looked at the dog, who was lying nearby, watching her every move with devoted eyes. "Bond very strong," she said softly. "On my planet, bond this strong is rare, special. "What happens when you leave?" June asked. Neri didn't answer. Instead, she knelt beside Bori and touched her forehead to his. They stayed that way for a long moment, as if sharing thoughts too deep for words. When Neri stood up, there were tears in her violet eyes. The ship was ready. After 3 days of hard work, Neri had fixed everything with June and Sumi's help. It was time for her to leave Earth and return to her planet, Luma. But there was a problem. Bori. June noticed it first. When Neri went to the bathroom or stepped outside, Bori would sit by the door and whine. When she came back, he would press against her leg as if afraid she might disappear forever. One morning, June put food in Bori's bowl, but the dog wouldn't eat. He just lay by the door, watching Neri with sad eyes. "What's wrong with him?" June asked Neri. Neri knelt beside Bori and touched his head gently. Her violet eyes closed for a moment. When she opened them, they were filled with tears. "Bond too strong now," she said softly. "Breaking will hurt him." "What do you mean?" June asked, though he feared he already knew. Neri used the translator to explain. "On my planet, when bond forms between my people and animals, it becomes part of both. To break bond is like cutting something from inside." "Are you saying Bori will be hurt if you leave?" June asked. Neri nodded. "Not just sad. Real pain. Maybe sickness." June sat down heavily. "But you have to go home." "Yes. My family waits. My work important." Neri looked at Bori, who had put his head in her lap. "I have solution, but you not like." "What solution?" June asked. "Bori, come with me," Neri said simply. June felt like someone had punched him. "Take Bori to your planet. On Luma, Earth dogs rare, special," Neri explained. "Bori would be honored. Happy. Live long life." "But he's my dog," June said, his voice breaking. "I've had him since he was a puppy." Neri's face showed she understood his pain. "I know. Hard choice. But what better? Bori sick, maybe die from broken bond. Or Bori happy, healthy, but far away." Before June could answer, Shumi burst through the door. Her face was flushed with running. "They're coming," she gasped. "Director Moon and his team. They have equipment that detected the ship's energy." June jumped up. "How close are they?" "Maybe 20 minutes, Shumi said. "They're searching all the woods near your house." Neri stood up quickly. "Must go now." "But we haven't decided about Bori," June said. "No time," Neri replied. She gathered the few things she had and headed for the door. June, Suma, and Bori followed her into the woods. They ran along the hidden path to the ship. In the distance, they could hear voices and the sound of breaking branches. "They're getting closer," Shumi whispered. Neri touched the side of her ship, and a door slid open. She turned to June. "Must decide now," she said. "Bori stay or Bori come." June looked at his dog. Bori was looking back and forth between him and Neri, as if torn between two loves. "If he stays, how bad will it be?" June asked. Neri's face was sad. "Very bad. Bond this strong, once formed, needs to be near. Distance causes pain." "Can't you break the bond gently?" Shuma suggested. Neri shook her head. "Bond not something made. Bond is found, is discovered between souls that match, cannot be broken, only endured with great suffering." The voices were getting louder. The agents would find them soon. "What about you?" June asked Neri. "Will you suffer too if you leave Bori behind?" Neri nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. "Yes, but my people trained for pain. Bori is not." June knelt in front of his dog and took his face in his hands. Bori licked his cheek, tail wagging slightly. "I don't want to lose you," June whispered to Bori. "But I can't let you suffer." The decision felt impossible. Keep his best friend and watch him suffer, maybe even die. or let him go to another planet, never to be seen again. June, Suma said urgently. They're almost here. You have to decide. I hear them coming, Shumi whispered, looking back through the trees. Maybe 2 minutes away. June stood up, his decision made. His heart felt like it was breaking, but he knew what he had to do. Take him, he said to Nari. Take Bori with you. Nari touched June's hand. You sure? No, June admitted, but I love him too much to let him suffer. June ran to his backpack and pulled out Bori's favorite toy, a worn tennis ball, and his blue blanket. He handed them to Nari. These are his favorites, June said, his voice shaking. And he likes to sleep with the blanket when it's cold. Nari took the items and put them inside the ship. I promised to take good care of him. The sound of breaking branches grew louder. The agents were very close now. You need to go, Suma said urgently. Nari nodded and turned toward her ship. Bori followed her, but then stopped and looked back at June. It's okay, boy, June said, tears running down his face. Go with her. It's okay. Bori whined, looking confused. He took a step toward June, then back toward Nari, torn between the two people he loved. We need a distraction, Shuma said suddenly. Something to give you time to escape. I'll do it, June said. I'll lead them away while you get on the ship. Too dangerous, Nari protested. It's the only way, June insisted. Sumi, get Nari and Bori safely to the ship. I'll draw the agents in another direction. Before anyone could argue, June ran off, making as much noise as possible. He crashed through bushes and called out loudly. Hey, over here. I found something. The voices in the distance changed direction. They were following him now. Sumi grabbed Nari's arm. Come on, this is your chance. They ran to the ship. Nari touched a panel, and the door opened fully. She turned to Suma. Thank you for help. Tell June. She paused, searching for words. Tell June he has good heart. Best of Earth people. Sumi nodded. I will. Now go, quickly. Nari stepped into the ship. Come, Bori. Time to go. But Bori didn't move. He stood at the entrance of the ship, looking back toward where June had disappeared. He barked once, then twice, louder. Bori, please, Nari said. Must go now. In the distance, they heard shouting. Then a cry of pain. Bori's ears went up. He barked again, more urgently. What is it? Shumi asked. Bori says June hurt, Nari explained, her face worried. Fell down, agents close. Bori barked again, then turned and ran in the direction June had gone. Bori, come back, Nari called, but the dog didn't stop. Suma looked at Nari. He's going to help June. Yes, Nari said softly, loyal to both of us. Through the trees, they could see flashlights. The agents were spreading out, searching. It would only be moments before they found the ship. What will you do? Shumi asked. Nari stood in the doorway of her ship, watching the direction Bori had gone. Her violet eyes seemed to glow with decision. Cannot leave without Bori, she said. Cannot leave June hurt. Before Sumi could say anything else, Nari was running after Bori, toward June and the danger. Suma watched her go, then looked at the ship. The door was still open. The escape still possible, but at what cost? In the growing darkness, she could hear Director Moon's voice, giving orders to his team. Secure the area. Find the source of that energy signal. Somewhere in the woods, June was hurt. Bori was trying to find him. And Nari, who could have escaped, was risking everything to help them both. Shumi took a deep breath and made her choice. She ran after Nari, ready to help however she could. The spacecraft sat alone in the clearing, its door open, waiting. 3 months had passed since that night in the woods. June sat on his porch, looking up at the stars. His leg, now healed from the fall, still ached when it rained. He often thought about what had happened, How Bori had found him when he fell down a steep hill while running from the agents. How Neri had appeared moments later, her violet eyes glowing in the darkness. How she had helped him stand despite the danger of being caught. And then the miracle. Mr. Hyun had appeared with Director Moon, telling the government agent that Jum was helping him test a new drone design. The old science teacher had brought papers, diagrams, and a small flying machine he had built years ago as a hobby. Somehow, Mr. Hyun had convinced Director Moon that the strange energy readings were from his homemade drone. While they talked, Shuma had helped Nari and Bori slip away to the ship. Jun remembered standing on his broken leg, pain shooting through him, as he watched Bori at the ship's entrance. The dog had looked back at him one last time. "Go," Jun had whispered. "It's okay, boy. Go." But Bori had surprised them all. He had barked once, loudly, then run back to Jun and stood firmly by his side. Neri had understood. With tears in her eyes, she had knelt and touched her forehead to Bori's one last time. No words were needed. Then she had entered her ship alone. The door closed, and moments later, the ship rose silently into the night sky, disappearing among the stars. Now, 3 months later, Jun still missed her, and he wondered if she missed them too. Bori sat beside him on the porch, head on Jun's knee. The dog seemed happy enough, but sometimes Jun would catch him looking at the sky, as if waiting. "I know, boy," Jun said softly, petting Bori's head. "I miss her too." Jun had almost fallen asleep in his chair when his phone buzzed. The screen showed a message from an unknown number. It contained only map coordinates. Curious and a little scared, Jun checked the location. It was his own backyard, near the big oak tree. With Bori following closely, Jun walked to the spot. At first, he saw nothing. Then a tiny light blinked on the ground. He bent down and found a small, strange device, no bigger than his palm. When he picked it up, it began to glow. Suddenly, a beam of light shot upward, and in that light appeared a perfect, small image of Nari, a hologram. "Jun," the tiny Nari said, her voice just as he remembered. "If you find this, know that I am well. I have made it home to Luma." Bori barked excitedly, jumping up to see the hologram. "Hello, dear Bori," Nari said, seeming to look right at the dog. "I have not forgotten you." The hologram shifted to show a beautiful place with purple skies and 2 moons. Strange buildings rose among trees that glowed softly. "This is my home," Nari continued. "But I have found that home is also where heart connects. My scientists have studied the bond between me and Bori. We have learned much." The image changed again, showing what looked like a small base on a gray, rocky surface. "We have built research station on moon you call Europa. It orbits your Jupiter. From there, we can study Earth safely, and perhaps someday build bridge between our worlds." Bori whined, trying to touch the hologram with his nose. "The device you hold is special," Neri explained. "It contains seed from my world, plant that grows between stars. It will bloom only under starlight, and it will help me find you again." The message ended with Neri reaching out her hand. As she did, the device warmed and opened like a flower. Inside was a small, glowing seed. Jun carefully took the seed, and with Bori watching, dug a small hole near the oak tree. He planted the seed and covered it gently. As they walked back to the house, Jun looked up at the stars again. He noticed something he hadn't seen before, a new pattern of stars, forming what looked almost like a dog running next to a girl. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of a bark, not Bori's, but somehow familiar. Bori's ears perked up, and he barked back, tail wagging. Jun smiled. This wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning.